Welcome to episode 2. It's May, spring has sprung, and as we walk around we can see some of the young fruits starting to appear on the trees. We are learning more about the canopy in this episode, so we're going to go over to Chew Valley Trees, which is one of the nurseries that supplied the young trees for this project.
Hi, I'm Lydia. We're at Chew Valley Trees, where I'm a sales advisor, and we're going to talk through different species, talking about the different woodland species that you might include in your forest garden. We're a specialist nursery in the southwest in Somerset. We grow a whole range of native and deciduous trees, from little 1-year-old saplings up to 15-year-old more mature specimens. You want to consider what your soil is like. Is it well drained? Is it holding water? So is it a waterlogged soil? You want to also consider the pH. Is it alkaline? Is it acidic? And you can look at other trees that are growing in the area to think about these things if you're completely new to it. Also think about, is it exposed? It might be that you want to consider putting a windbreak up. One of the really good trees for a windbreak is the poplar. So you've got the native bat poplar and you've got the aspen, both really good choices for when it's really windy. If you've identified that your site is maybe on the drier side, it could be that it's sandy and drains really quickly, or it's quite shallow, rocky soil that just doesn't hold much moisture, then one tree that's a good one to consider is the rowan. So it's a native tree, native flowering tree. You'll get the white flowers in April, May, and then you'll get the red berries after, bringing in wildlife at different times of the year. If you've identified that your site is on the wetter side, so it might be that it's clay that holds a lot of water, it's bottom of the slope that doesn't drain very well, then you could look at willows, poplars, alders, lots of native trees that are really suited to our wet winters and wet summers. You've got willow here, and this is a good one not only because it will grow in the soil type, but you can then also use the cuttings for weaving, for making structures. So it's another way to use this tree. So you want to consider different heights of trees. It's going to be nice and natural if you've got big trees, small trees. The hawthorn is a really great small native tree. It's only going to grow to about 6 meters tall, and you've got lots of interest for wildlife different times of the year. If you're looking for a bigger tree, hornbeam's a really great choice. It's often confused with beech because the leaf's quite similar, but one of the key differences when you're choosing beech or hornbeam is that beech is suited to quite dry soils, hornbeam's suited to quite wet, heavy soils. Some trees are going to grow quicker than others, so you could plant birches, really rapid growers and growing like 1 meter a year. This is the downy birch, which is a better one for wet soil. You've also got the silver birch, that's better, slightly drier soil. One thing about the forest garden is essentially it is still your garden, so you want to have trees there that you're going to enjoy. You can pick the fruit. So you get apple trees, pear trees, plum trees, and you can get them on different size rootstocks, which will determine how big they're going to grow. So if you only want trees that are going to grow 6 foot, or if you want them to grow to 15 foot, there are lots of different options for fruit trees. You can also think about the different shapes. You can get them just with a single stem, like a traditional tree. You can go multi-stem. We've got some quinces here. They like a nice sunny spot. Or you can do hazels, and this is a great one for the understory because they don't need too much sunlight to produce a crop. So there's loads of different native species, but you could also mix in some ornamental trees that are really well adjusted to our climate and give great benefits to our wildlife. For example, we've got the snowy mespil, the Amelanchier. That's originally from North America, but it's really well adjusted to our climate. It's got these great spring flowers, and it's got berries in the autumn which are edible to humans as well. Taste a bit like blueberries. One thing's really important is how to plant correctly. So you want to make sure that this is ground level, so you're not burying this trunk at all because it can rot. By doing that, not digging a big hole, you're encouraging the tree to get used to the soil that it's in. Generally, don't disturb the roots too much because you don't want to break all those nice fibrous roots on the outside. If you ever do find that they've started to circle, then you can just cut them cleanly. You're going to want to stake a tree like this. A single stake for this sort of pot size works. But if you're going for something a little bit bigger, this size, bigger even, then we recommend doing a stake either side and then a crossbar between. What you might notice is on a container nursery, we're going to have everything irrigated. It's really important that the trees are watered really regularly in the pots, and then when you plant them out, carry that through. So you're watering them a couple of times a week in the hot sunny weather like we're having at the moment. You could also get watering bags, just remember to keep those topped up. And generally, if you're going for bigger trees, we'd always recommend container grown. They're just a lot happier and they take a lot quicker.
In this area closer to the road, we've got a bunch of native species. We've got some beech, field maple, some birch further along there, rowan. You can eat the young leaves of beech in the spring, slight lemony flavour. Yeah. This area's been committed to hazel, and then over here, we've got some Gristolinia, also known as New Zealand broadleaf. That's a good screening hedge. There's neighbouring properties on the other side of this. This is the northern end of the site, but it's south facing, so we've got a little stand of crab apples here. So along this westward edge of the site, we've got quite an extensive windbreak hedge of sea buckthorn, and then as we move along into this corner here, we've got the black poplars. These are noted for being really quite vigorous, so they're good because you can get the shelter in early. So here we've got a stand of fruit trees: apple, cherry, peach, apricot, quince. And in the space between these fruit trees, we've got some of the understory that's already beginning to establish, the gooseberries, blackcurrants and red currants. So in addition to the row of hazels over there, we've got a freestanding black walnut tree here, and that's nearby to a filbert and another hazelnut there, so forming a nut grove. And then we've got another group of fruit trees here in a group of 4: cherry, mulberry, plum and snowy messbill. These are the ones that we've made an effort to mulch around and do some quite extensive ground prep. So we're going to see more about what can be underplanted underneath these fruit trees. This is the willow, which you saw in episode 1. We've got it in a circle here, and hopefully it won't be long before we can weave that into a dome. Don't beat yourself up if it's not 100% success rate. Not everything will establish probably. Looks like this one hasn't made it. Okay, so we've had a word about the canopy. Now I want to talk a bit about the understory. We've got about an acre of land here to populate with vegetation, so it's quite a big undertaking. It can be a considerable effort and potentially a considerable expense as well. So got to really think carefully about the approach. And the question is, what is the filter? What's the criteria that you're using to narrow down all the options available to you? There are, I've got books full of species. There's online database with tens of thousands of species available. How am I filtering these down? One of the constraints that we've got is a limitation on indoor growing space. That means you can grow plants on in controlled conditions and plant them out. That's particularly good for woody and perennial species which are slow growing. So we're going to do what we can in terms of indoor growing, but alongside that, in order to get the most bang for our buck, need to focus on other ways of doing things. So one of the first criteria for my shortlisting process is ease of propagation. Is it something that can be sown direct? Is it something that self-seeds easily, or can it be propagated by division, cuttings, layering, or some other method where we can multiply what you've got? The other shortlisting criteria, it needs to be a resilient plant, so it needs to be hardy, and also looking for things that are vigorous and fast growing. And then also, is it useful? Edible's nice, but I'm also interested in dye plants, and it doesn't have to be directly useful to you as a human. It can have a use in terms of its ecology, so plants that generate a lot of biomass for mulch, for instance. I've gone through a lot of plants now and put a lot of entries into my spreadsheet, and the columns of my spreadsheet were multiplying and multiplying because I'm worried that I've got to take into account every factor. I want to share a couple of shortcuts that I've been thinking about. Anything in the legume family is probably going to be nitrogen fixing, or almost definitely. Anything in the mint family is going to be an aromatic, so in your permaculture guild that would be your pest confuser. Anything that is in the daisy family attracts hoverflies, so that's something that's a host plant for beneficial insects. Likewise, the carrot family. Mineral accumulators, that will be things which are tap-rooted, that are going to draw things up from the subsoils. And then in terms of plants for pollinators, if you're planning a polyculture, it's kind of happening by definition anyway. So long as I'm shortlisting a mix of the botanical family, I don't have to worry so much about having separate tick boxes for all the guild roles. I was getting bogged down in all the different characteristics to do with shade, sun, exposure, moisture, nutrient content, soil type. There's a lot of different factors there. Shortcut number 2 would be looking at the habitat of the plants. There's a website, Plants for Future, and each plant, it has a little section on what its natural habitat is, and it also has a little section on what habitats it would be suited for in an applied garden design. I can quickly get a group of plants that would be suitable for certain conditions by looking into the habitats. What I will do is I will share the spreadsheet that I'm using in the show notes. You can look at it on Google Drive or what have you, so you can kind of see what I'm looking at and the process that I'm going through to generate the shortlist. And so what I'm going to do is take these plants from the shortlist and, just try them and see what works. And what we're going to do today is a bit of direct sowing. So we've got 4 trees that we mulched kind of over the winter. It hasn't had time to decompose into a rich compost yet. So that we can make a start now, we're going to make little compost pockets and sow into those compost pockets. Dog's keen to help. The layers of the lasagna are decomposing. There's lots of worms. Greg here is digging a little area for our compost pocket. So we're going around the perimeter to make sure we get good coverage with our ground cover. Then we'll do a few more in the middle to plant all the other nitrogen fixers and whatnot. I think let's get sowing. They're all things that can be sown directly at this time of year. Whether it works on paper and in practice is what we're going to find out. I'm slightly concerned because it really hasn't rained a lot. We've had a particularly dry 3 or might even be 4 weeks now. I can see some of the nasturtiums are popping up. It may well be that actually the lesson from this is that only the fast growing annuals succeed in that particular situation. I bought a tranche of seeds for about £150 of 30 odd different species and have trialled them. So it may well be that that's a very expensive nasturtium that grows there, but we'll see what comes of it.